Next story I wanted to talk about is about a guy named Nathan French. Now, you might not have heard about this guy before. I've never covered him on my channel, but he is what he calls a prophet. He calls himself a prophet of God, receives divine information from God himself to pass down to others. He's basically writing new Bible books, similar to what Kat Kerr does, our old friend Kat Kerr and our friend Robin Bullock. They both consider themselves prophets and write new books to the Bible. I mean, they're not writing the books and inserting them and selling them as new versions of the Bible, but that's what they're doing effectively. When they speak, these are God's words being transmitted through them. So I wanted to take a look at this guy because he is one of many prophets who it seems to be prophesying things about Donald Trump. He went on the Elijah list, Elijah Streams YouTube channel with Steve Schultz. This was early November, I believe November 5th. You can kind of see it in the clock here in the background if you squint. So let's listen and see what he says.
And the Lord's going to bring Trump back in. Now, Trump, I think President Trump actually would prefer not to have to come back and serve in the presidency, because his life is probably really great not having to take on that responsibility. But I believe that he knows deep down in his spirit, he knows that God has chosen him, not someone else. He's flawed for sure. I don't believe in some of the things he says about vaccines.
Isn't that interesting? That's the thing that he took issue with. He says Donald Trump is flawed for the things that he says about vaccines. Of course, Trump has been promoting vaccines recently, to everyone's surprise. Really happy that Trump's been doing that, trying to encourage people to get vaccinated. That's a good thing, right? This guy doesn't feel that way, apparently. And that makes Trump flawed. That is hilarious in some ways and sad in others, of course. That's kind of the tagline of my show at this point, hilarious and sad. Anyways, so Nathan French believes that Donald Trump is supposed to be president, according to God. He's going to be president again. It's his calling. And he got this strange idea that Donald Trump doesn't want to be president. What gave you that idea? Donald Trump didn't have to run for president the first time. He did it because he wanted power, obviously. That's why any politician runs for political office. Who the fuck would want to be a politician, in all seriousness, if it wasn't for the power? Now, some people use that power for good, like, for example, Bernie Sanders. Or at least they try to use it for good. They use it with good intentions at the very least, even if they aren't doing the right thing 100% of the time. They're at least trying to do the right thing. But I would venture to say every politician, including Bernie Sanders, is in it for the power, even if they have good intentions with that power. Donald Trump got into politics for the power, just like every other politician on the fucking planet. I cannot relate to that in any way. I just do not understand why anybody would be compelled to run for political office. I know people who want to run for political office, and it just is not connecting for me. I don't get it. Politics is like a constant game of who am I going to piss off next, and what angle are they going to take to try to destroy my life. That's what it's all about. I really don't understand why anybody would try to engage in that, but you know, people absolutely love this shit, not least of whom is Donald Trump. I mean, he didn't have to from the start, but he did it anyways. So I completely disagree with his assessment that Donald Trump doesn't have to and probably doesn't want to. I genuinely believe that Trump wants to do this. I haven't seen a hint of evidence that Trump doesn't want to be the president.
God called him as the Trump card, and he's going to throw that card on the table in just the next few months.
Isn't that interesting? God called him as the Trump card. That sounds familiar to me. God, I have like this photographic memory. Like, I know exactly where people are pulling their quotes from. I'll tell you exactly where this came from. This clip came out December 2019. It's when people were still running, campaigns were still going, and it was before the 2020 election actually took place. It was Johnny Enlow sitting there talking with his wife, and I even know exactly what timestamp to go to. It's about it's about one quarter of the way through. Listen.
It's the only time I've ever, while seeing a vision, actually talked out loud. And I go,
I'm sorry, my mistake. Is about halfway through. Let's keep listening.
And then the Lord progressively began to speak regarding that. And he said, this time in the presidency is going to be a hinge of the ages. And you be known as before Trump and after Trump because of the way I'm going to use him. I'm using him as a trump card, but I'm the trump card player.
Using him as a trump card, but I'm the trump card player. Does that sound familiar? What did this guy just say?
God called him as the trump card, and he's going to throw that card on the table in just the next few months.
I guess we know who he listens to, Johnny Enlow. That's really interesting. I guess this guy is kind of connected to Johnny Enlow, which, by the way, Johnny Enlow is most famous for being basically the linchpin between QAnon and Christianity. So I would be willing to bet, I mean, I don't know for sure. It seems to me that Nathan French is most likely a QAnoner if he listens to Johnny Enlow.
How God is actually going to take back what the enemy tried to unauthorize, he tried to steal, and he tried to manipulate, and the whole system of how we elect people in the future will be restored. Integrity will come back to the election process.
Good.
This guy is obviously making prophecies here, like he's writing new books to the Bible, basically. Integrity will return to the system, God is going to reinstall Trump, all this other stuff. Complete nonsense and no basis for believing it at all, but he says it anyways.
Let me ask you this. How would you must have people, your people that go to your church or people when you're out and about at conferences, who would say, come on, guys, 2 days ago was the 1-year anniversary of the election. If it wasn't over before that, it's over after a year. How can you possibly waste our time and energy claiming Trump's going to come back? He would have come back long ago had it not, if he was going to come back. What would you say?
I would say, well, you're exactly right. Dude's not coming back. Why don't you just get over it? I'm sorry. I know that question wasn't directed to me, though, so let's listen to Nathan French, see what he says.
Well, many people said when I was there at the White House and when President Trump came over and did the fist bump and all the news channels were blazing and taking all the pictures, right? And I took a risk to prophesy over him and Melania. But I said, you're going to win big, and he's like, I hope you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, yeah. And I repeated it because it was like he wasn't convinced. Right. Because he knew that they had rigged the system because their intel had come in. They knew they were going to try to hijack it. And so I'm standing there in front of him on my birthday.
Yeah, I just want to point out, like, this guy has almost like a supernatural view of Donald Trump. Like, he reveres him to a different degree than other people. I mean, listen to his voice and look at his body language and how his eyes light up when he, recounts this story of talking to Donald Trump, of meeting Donald Trump at a rally, even for a few seconds. He's just so excited about it. Look at his smile.
Hope you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, yeah. And I repeated it because it was like he wasn't convinced, right? Because he knew that they had rigged the system.
Nathan French is saying this, you're going to win big, not as a prediction. Donald Trump seems to have taken it as a prediction. It wasn't a prediction. It was a prophecy from Nathan French. It was a prophecy. There's a distinct difference between the two.
And so I'm standing there in front of him on my birthday. What's happening, what we're seeing right now is the unraveling of the enemy's plan because God's been shining the light. Remember, I gave a word, get right before he shines the light. And I saw the Lord shining a light into the dark places and all the.
Now he's actually describing a vision that God gave him, like an open vision or something that God showed to him, like the revelators from the New Testament, like Daniel or the book of Revelations, whoever the fuck wrote that. Was it Peter or Paul or Mary or John? I don't fucking remember. Anyways, John, I think it was John. He's talking like he's one of them, like he was receiving an actual vision from God himself about God shining a light into the darkness and establishing Trump as like the president of Earth or something.
You know, get right before he shines the light. And I saw the Lord shining a
Mhm.
light into the dark places and all the scurry of the evildoers, or those who had worked against Christ with an antichrist spirit. And so anyway, we're going to see God finish what he began. The word promises that he will finish the good work he began. Where people miss it and start trying to discredit the prophetic community is when they start getting the timeline messed up. If somebody gives a word that, hey, on this date, this person's going to be in office, and it doesn't come to pass, then it was a false word. It wasn't true.
That's spot on. Completely agree. So what he's saying here is to alleviate that problem, stop naming dates. You can still prophesy, but don't name dates. He's seemingly coming to a conclusion that a lot of people came to like centuries ago. Don't name dates. Jehovah's Witnesses used to do this same shit. They would name dates over and over and over again. God, hang on. Let me find a list real quick. Just a short list. 1878, 1881, 1913, 1914, 1918, 1925, 1975, and a whole bunch of smaller ones in between all of those dates. That's just a few of the big dates that Jehovah's Witnesses named, where people were selling their shit off and donating the proceeds to the organization because they believed they wouldn't be here by the end of these dates. And by 1975, Jehovah's Witnesses learned better and said, okay, you know what? We're never going to name another date, but we'll imply dates from that point on. Then they started saying, we're probably not going to see the new millennium. We're not going to see the year 2000. Probably. They wouldn't come out and say it outright. We will not. So just sell your shit off. Like they were basically saying in 1975 and other end times predictions they made. But they were at least implying it for the year 2000. And they continue to do that even today. Not long ago, they made a 12-month prediction and said, I don't believe that we're going to be here for another 12 months. Effectively, that's what a governing body member said. I believe Stephen Lett. I made a video about it a while back. But anyways, Jehovah's Witnesses learned better not to make date predictions. And I guess Nathan French here seems to be learning that lesson that people have already learned like long ago. I wonder what took them so long. Don't set dates.
It wasn't true. But if they give that word and the date that they gave hasn't yet come to pass, you can't call them a liar, or that they were wrong, because the time hasn't happened yet.
Okay, I guess that's true. In the same vein, I could say, I'm going to own a pink dragon that breathes fire at some point. That is just as easily proven true as your claim that Trump is going to be the president at some point. Just don't name dates, I guess. It doesn't make it any more likely that it's going to happen if you don't name a date. He is onto something here. If you don't name dates, then you don't have to move the goalpost, like Kat Kerr keeps doing. She said Trump is going to win in a landslide, and it failed. She said that Trump was going to pull it out in the end. It may not be a landslide, but he'll become president. It failed. She said Biden would never be president. That failed. These people continue to say Trump is going to be president in 2021. That failed. They keep making these predictions, and they keep moving it back. Now Kat Kerr is saying, well, they're not going to give him 3 years. Like, if they made him president today, then he'd only have from 2021 to, 2024. And that's only 3 years instead of the full 4 that you get as president. So they're going to have to give him his terms later. At the end of Biden's term, they'll put him in. She keeps moving the goalpost. I guess this guy's saying if you just don't name a date in the first place, you don't have to move the goalpost. You just say it's going to happen eventually. Genius.
Because the time hasn't happened yet. If somebody doesn't give a date and God gives a word and speaks through the voice of his prophets, which he's doing on the earth right now, because there's still prophets today. This is the prophets and prophetic people is my new sermon series starting this weekend, Saturday night and Sunday. I'm going to be talking about prophets and prophetic people. And there's a whole bunch of people on the planet that don't believe that there are still prophets on the earth. And so they scripturally are trying to resolve that and they're teaching people that prophets no longer exist.
Yeah, I mean, I can get on board with that idea. If somebody actually made a prediction, which, by the way, would have to be very specific, it would have to name a date, and it would have to name a time, honestly, for me to believe it too. And it would have to all come true exactly if I were to believe that it was a prophecy. And I would have to know for a fact that you had no power to influence it. Nobody else knew about it before it happened. So the kind of thing where you write the prophecy down on a piece of paper and you fold it up and you put it in an envelope and you mail it to me, and it sits on my dresser for 12 months or a year or something, and then a year, for 12 months or 2 years or something. And in 2 years, I open that letter and I read it, and sure enough, every very specific thing that you predicted came true exactly. And I could verify that there's no other way that you could have possibly known this but through God himself. Then I would believe it. But we don't see that kind of shit. You know the kind of shit we see? It's big, general, sweeping things that they say God gave me insight into. And at best, it's 50-50 if it comes true or not. They claimed Trump was going to win the election. That's not specific, and it's not miraculous if it does happen. That's not a prophecy. That's a prediction. But they're framing it like it is a prophecy, claiming it is a prophecy. These people cannot get over themselves. There's another clip I wanted to watch, though. It's from our old friend Kat Kerr. It's actually a newer clip, just came out. She's had similar things to say to this guy Nathan French. So let's give this one a look. This was on November 10th, 2021. Check it out.
I take power over all the power of the enemy that is involved in activities in the White House or DC, and in ways that they're cheating, stealing, and lying. They're defiling the people by allowing evil to come in. I command my host of heaven, 100 million, to go there now, and 24 hours a day for the next 10 days or 30 days, you will release the terror of God upon those places, upon the people doing those things, that they will come to repentance, or great fear will fall upon them, and they will just sometimes stop what they're doing. Sometimes they will feel like they have to report it. Go host, make toast. And in that second, they will immediately go and begin to leave waves. There are these waves of the terror of God. I mean, there's a terror. There's a terror of God coming, not for us. It's not for the body. It's for the wicked. And he is going to do it. But we can send the army of heaven who actually can bring that and release that. They will do it.
Wow. What the holy fuck was that? My face is going to be permanently frozen in this position when I turn 70. What was she even doing? It sounded like she was demonstrating how she calls for angels to come down and do things. Of course, Kat Kerr, we know, believes herself to be a commander of an angelic army, and in fact, she even wears a Commander Cat patch on her camo outfit sometimes. Like I said, I have like a photographic memory for this stuff now. Like, of all the useless information to store away in my mind, I have perfectly preserved like the timestamps and the clip names and lengths and everything of the craziest evangelical like televangelists that you have ever seen in your life. Look at this Commander Cat badge she has here on the right in this camo fucking outfit. She genuinely believes herself to be the commander of an angelic army.
This country, hello, we have someone who's truly in charge, who is not the one who's sitting there now. Right. Our president is legitimate, and his name is Donald Trump. I'm just going to say it.
Okay. So anyways, the point is Kat Kerr believes herself to be like a full-blown like angelic army commander. And I guess what we just witnessed was her smugly, as you can see if you're watching the video version of this, smugly calling angels down to disrupt the Biden administration because they evidently stole it from Donald Trump. Is she ever going to give up on this, or is she just going to continue to move the goalpost? Just keep pushing it back. She claimed he was going to win in a landslide. He didn't. She claimed he was going to be inaugurated on January 20th instead of Biden. She was wrong. She claimed that he was going to be reinstated in 2021. Still waiting. When is she going to give it up? Will she ever? Is she just going to keep throwing these out there until she gets a hit? I don't know, but I honestly, I have to say, this is entertaining as hell.